and good morning or good afternoon to you, depending on which area of the country you're joining us from. I am Philip Wiedmeyer. I'm chairman of the Alabama Clean Fuels Coalition and vice president of Transportation Energy Partners. We are glad to have you join us today for this webinar on the new MAP-21 legislation. And our speakers today include, besides myself, Ken Brown, who is our Washington consultant for Transportation Energy Partners, Michael Kuntz with the Federal Highway Administration, and Vanessa Williams from the Federal Transit Administration. Let me briefly provide an introduction to you on Transportation Energy Partners. TEP is an independent national nonprofit organization that provides policy support for the nation's Clean Cities coalitions and our stakeholders. And TEP is not affiliated with the U.S. Department of Energy. Our mission is to keep the coalitions and their stakeholders informed of key policies and programs and to educate key decision makers about the importance of advancing markets for clean vehicles and fuels. Several of TEP's current activities is that we are currently in the process of finalizing our strategic action plan, which is designed to expand our efforts and increase the organization's effectiveness. The objective of the plan is to mobilize the Clean Cities coalitions and their stakeholders into a more powerful force that is able to impact policies and programs that can advance our industry. We're beginning to implement the plan with 2 action items, and you are participating in one of those today, and that is webinars that are designed to provide you information and connect with key federal policymakers and keep you informed about key programs and funding opportunities that Profile Energy Independence Summit in Washington next spring. A little about that summit. I want to encourage all of you to save the date, which will be April 8th through 10th of 2013. We held a similar summit in March of this year. It was our best summit ever. Had more than 150 participants, including Clean City Coalition leaders, their stakeholders, and national leaders in the clean transportation industry. Speakers included Connecticut Governor Dannel Malloy, White House CEQ Chairman Nancy Sutley, Congressman Steve Israel, and Dan Sperling, Director of the Institute for Transportation Studies. We had excellent speakers and panelists focusing on federal policies and programs. Also looked at innovative state and local initiatives around the country and key partnerships with industry. We also organized more than 170 meetings on Capitol Hill where we educated members of Congress about how Clean Cities coalitions and our partners are implementing alternative fuel projects across the nation. And these projects are all reducing our dependence on foreign oil. Sponsors included leaders in the electric, natural gas, propane, and biofuels industries. Next spring's summit will be extremely important since it will come shortly after the upcoming election. Regardless of who wins in November, there will be a new landscape in Washington. So we'll have the opportunity to meet with leaders of the next administration as well as the new leadership in the House and the Senate. So we hope you can join us in D.C. and encourage your local stakeholders to come as well. You can go to the TEP website, which is shown on your screen here, transportationenergypartners.org, to learn more about the summit. And registration will open in the next couple of weeks. Okay, so our first speaker today is Ken Brown, who is the TEP Washington consultant who will be the moderator for today's webinar. Ken is based in Washington, D.C. He has more than 25 years of experience working on energy and environmental issues at the federal, state, and local levels. He was instrumental in organizing this year's Energy Independence Summit and is again helping us develop and implement our strategic action plan as TEP seeks to expand its program offerings. And he's also hard at work organizing the summit for next year. Ken?
Great. Thanks, Philip. And good afternoon, everybody. Pleased to have so many folks on the webinar this afternoon. I think, as everybody knows, we're focusing on the issue of the new transportation law, MAP-21, and are going to have a presentation from our partners within the Federal Highway Administration and the Federal Transit Administration, who are going to give us an update on what this new law, which was passed in July and signed by the President in July, means for alternative fuels and vehicles and infrastructure. I think, as everybody knows, the Department of Transportation has been a very important partner to our industry for many, many years in both the Federal Highway Administration through its efforts to support local transit agencies and others to purchase alternative fuel buses, have been major partners in the effort. They've contributed hundreds of millions of dollars over the past 10 to 15 years to support our industry, and they will continue to be an important partner for the future. So we're very pleased to have folks from both the Highway Administration and the Transit Administration with us here today. So with that, I'm going to introduce our first speaker from the Federal Highway Administration. It's Michael Kuntz. Mike, I think many of you know, he participated in our summit last year. He's been worked with the Federal Highway Administration for many years. He's been involved with the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Program, also called the CMAQ program, for many years, and he's going to talk about the CMAQ program under the new transportation law. So thanks for being with us here today, Mike.
And Mike, before you get started, let me just remind our attendees that they can type in questions and send those in, and we'll field answers to that. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, thank you, Philip, and thank you, Ken, and thanks also to the partners for inviting me here today. It's a pleasure to do these. We're trying to get as much information out there, as much good information as possible. I know there's a lot of confusion and a lot of new things out there with MAP-21, but we'll try and shed some light on that here today. Next slide, please. I wanted to give just kind of a basic overview, just a couple minutes worth on what the program is and what it's all about, and a little bit of history, and then move into the changes and the focus under MAP-21, the changes to CMAQ, and then I think, I believe at the end we'll probably take your questions and your comments and suggestions, and we'll go from there. Next one. During all of our webinars, our workshops, and our training since I've been involved in the program, this is the one slide I put up there, or some derivative of it, that I actually try to read, because this is pretty much the mantra of the whole program. It's found in Title 23, it's Section 149, and it answers what and why. The CMAQ program is established for transportation projects that contribute to the attainment or the maintenance of the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, the NAAQS, for ozone, carbon monoxide, or particulate matter. That hasn't changed. That really hasn't changed in the 20 years of the program's existence, and hasn't changed, that marching order anyway hasn't changed with MAP-21. So that's the last thing I read from it. Next one, please. We get questions all the time on just, the basic litmus test for the program, and the answer to these three questions will at least get you in the door. It's what we call the three elements of CMAQ. That three-legged chair, as you see there, is a transportation. It has to be a transportation project. We can't do anything with power plant emissions or scrubbers or filters or anything like that on a point source. It has to be an emissions-reducing project. That project has to reduce the emissions. It has to improve the air quality, reduce those emissions, that are the target of that non-attainment and maintenance designation from the EPA. And lastly, along those lines, has to be either located in, or benefit that non-attainment or maintenance area that the EPA has designated for the area. Next one, please. Just a little bit of a program rundown. Since 1992, we've done about 28,000 projects, a little over that now, and we've invested roughly $30 billion in those projects. And you can see the wide-ranging general project types that you see there, but really we're probably up to about 40 different specific project types at this point outside those relatively broad categories. Next one. That's just a different graphical presentation. I think you can see that we're still predominantly a transit and traffic flow program. By and large, most years we see probably close to 3/4 and at least 2/3 of the program being devoted in terms of dollars obligated, dollars reserved, in other words, to both transit elements of our obligations, our state and local obligations, and also to congestion mitigation or pure traffic flow types of projects. That's 1992 through 2010, and 2010 is the last complete year for which we have validated information. Okay, our next. And now we'll go into the particulars in MAP-21, at least give you the rundown on what's been going on with the new legislation and our CMAQ program. Next one, please. This is just the real 5 basics. And if you haven't already looked into the legislation, it is at Section 1113 in a very, very large bill. The program continues up until about 9-10 months ago. We weren't even really sure with CMAQ that was going to be the case. We thought maybe we'd still have eligibility for most of our projects and program types, but there was a real possibility that they were going to be rolled into some other program. But CMAQ did indeed survive and continues through the 2 years of the bill, 2013 and 2014. That's a point right there, because this is a 2-year bill, unlike most of our transportation legislation, or authorizations, I should say. The CMAQ apportionment by state is based on FY09 proportions. Some of you may be familiar or have used our fairly elaborate apportionment formula, statutory apportionment formula in the past. That's gone with MAP-21. It's the program's dollars are now based on past proportions. Our eligibility guidelines are fairly intact. If you had something that had been eligible before MAP-21, chances are it probably still is. We have a brand new priority for PM 2.5 areas. Essentially, the states have to invest a certain portion of their CMAQ funds in those PM 2.5 areas. We'll get into that a little bit more. And we also have another brand new element, and that's a performance planning or a performance measurement, a planning and documentation effort for in CMAQ anyway, for the larger MPOs. Next one, please. Our estimated funding, it's a little bit higher, but generally for planning purposes, it's about the same as it has been. We're about $2.2 billion for both years, estimated both years for FY 2013 and 2014. These are the authorized levels. The 2013 has essentially been apportioned, and we have a good handle on that, and likely that the 2014 will be, again, about the same. Next one. Apportionment. We touched a little bit about on this a couple of seconds ago. Our long-standing 20-year-old apportionment formula, which really didn't change all that much in those 20 years, was removed by MAP-21 in favor of a process that is based on prior years. Both the state's federal aid highway program and the CMAQ dollars will be based on prior years, either proportions or actual dollars. So essentially, that's why you saw those $2.21 and $2.23 billion figures that haven't gone up a whole lot, and because of that proportionality, they're going to stay pretty much the same as states have been used to getting. The FY14, fiscal year 14, includes steps for a minimum assurance. I say not a minimum guarantee or an equity bonus, those terms that have been used in past authorizations, because it's really not being labeled as such anymore, but there are some steps being taken in the legislation to kind of bring that same priority to force. In other words, states will receive at least 95% of their highway trust fund contribution. Again, similar to that minimum guarantee or equity bonus. We can move forward. Project eligibility issues. Again, your eligibilities by and large will continue in MAP-21 as they have been, certainly since Safety Lou, and by and large since the beginning of the program. There is some added language that draws attention, or at least some pretty strong highlights on electric and natural gas vehicle infrastructure, refueling types of projects. Renewed language from Safety Lou on diesel retrofits. That priority is still very much with us. Similar to that, a priority for construction equipment and construction vehicles, kind of a secondary reference to diesel retrofit priority, and also some added language drawing attention to traffic flow efforts. Suballocation and that fine PM, that PM 2.5 priority. There is no formal CMAQ suballocation included in MAP-21. On several of the drafts of the prior bills leading up to MAP-21, CMAQ was actually in the process of being suballocated down to the MPO and even the county and local level. That did not survive the last bill. Folks, my screen just went blank. We still there?
Yes, we can hear you, Mike.
Yeah, my screen just went blank. I'll tell you what. I have good old
You're
paper,
on,
so we can just go to the next
suballocation of the PM 2.5 priority.
Okay. The suballocation is essentially only an issue of PM 2.5 priority. We're not going to have any real formal suballocation. It's only going to amount to that issue that was basically a weighted version of what the PM 2.5 priority will amount to. That's been calculated. It hasn't quite been distributed yet, but it has been sent out on our fiscal management and information system. Next slide.
If you move your mouse, you might get your screen back.
I've been trying, believe me.
Okay, sorry.
Well, why don't we just go with, you can just tell me what the heading of the slide is, just so I'm on the right one.
Yeah, this one's CMAQ federal share.
Okay, CMAQ and federal share has been a big issue. About 7 years ago now, we had the Energy Independence and Security Act that provided CMAQ at 100% federal share at the state and local option. That was also carried forward with our extensions of Safety Lou. With MAP-21 and especially with the October 1st passing of the fiscal year, that flexibility is gone. The only element you'll see now that's funded at 100% federal share is certain elements in 23 U.S.C. 120 that provide 100% share for safety-oriented projects, and there are a few of those like carpooling and van pooling that are also CMAQ eligible, but those safety-oriented projects are the only ones that will survive that 100%. Next slide, please.
Is the standard share, Mike, 80%? Is that right?
Standard share is 80%, but that also will depend on some sliding scale issues that are a part of the financing federal aid guidelines. But by and large, we're back to 80%. Gotcha.
The next slide is CMAQ transfers.
That's also a fairly substantial change. CMAQ transfers with MAP-21. We had a fairly specific, very specific transfer to other federal aid programs like SDP and NHS at a level each year of about 20 to 22%. That went away. We are now subject to the normal federal aid highway program transfer provision at 23 U.S.C. 126, and that transfer provision is essentially a 50% ceiling. You can essentially transfer 50% of the program to other parts of the federal aid program. Next.
Evaluation and assessment.
Okay, MAP-21 requires implementation and maintenance of the CMAQ reporting system. We have that reporting system, both a production system in-house and also a tracking system for public access available. So essentially that amounts to maintenance of the system. Annual reports from those annual reports will continue to be loaded into the tracking system. The legislation also requires the availability of that system on the web or some other means of communication, but that's already there. Next.
Next is cost effectiveness.
All right, the program focus, not only for CMAQ, but really for MAP-21 in general, is on cost efficiency for the most part. That's certainly one of those areas that have drawn a lot of emphasis. We've been charged in the CMAQ section 1113 to develop tables and graphics and other means to illustrate cost effectiveness types of relationships, tons of emissions reduced per mile, things of that nature. Those of you that were around during the last development of guidance for safety Lou might remember the earlier drafts where we had some of those tables, but through the coordination process we were asked to remove those. But if you do remember those, there will be some things similar to those added to this version, and they are designed really to help the states and the metropolitan planning organizations and other sponsors to select those CMAQ projects that provide that biggest bang for the buck, the most emissions reductions for the dollar spent in CMAQ. Next, please.
Performance plan.
This is brand new, for the most part, uncharted territory for us. The MPOs that are home to transportation management areas that are over 1 million population and non-attainment maintenance for some pollutant will be required to do a performance plan that covers both emissions and congestion. The plan will need to be updated every 2 years, and that plan will also require a progress report from the previous program, covering the previous program of CMAQ. Next, please.
Performance measures.
Okay, these are similar to that performance plan requirement. These are measures, federal aid overall, and it's at 23 U.S.C. 150. Ours, for this purpose, will be put forth to carry out the requirements of the CMAQ program. We're required to establish the measures, not so much the targets, but the measures, and we work with the states to actually come up with the targets that they need to implement. And similar to the CMAQ part of the performance plan, it'll include both traffic congestion and emissions measures for on-road mobile sources. And next.
Next will be outcomes study.
Okay, the outcomes study, we've had to do pretty major studies of the program since T21. We did the study under the National Academies of Sciences under T21, then we did the evaluation and assessment with a number of case studies under Safety Lou. Now this outcomes study is a similar effort, but we've been tasked to go out and use an independent scientific research organization, and we need to report on that preliminarily in about a year, and then have a final report that covers emissions, health impacts, potential improvements, and the improvements that we've seen in modeling and analysis and things of that nature, and that has to be turned in by the end of the bill in 2014. And next slide.
Further guidance coming soon?
We're looking into, or actually working on the formal guidance document, but prior to that, hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll have some additional guidance on some fairly involved sticking points. One on operating assistance. We had some fairly major changes on operating assistance in the legislation that our attorneys are looking into pretty closely. The implementation of the PM 2.5 priority, and also some additional guidance on just how we're going to go about managing and handling these performance plans from the large MPOs. Okay, next.
And that's it.
Could be the questions, right? I
Yep.
apologize for that, folks. I'm still in the dark here.
I thought we did a good job of, you did a good job makeshift there.
Never throw the paper away, huh?
It's being flexible. So, yeah, computers are great until they fail. So I'm going to, I think what we're going to do is we're going to move to the FTA folks, and then we will take questions at the end. And I want to remind folks we're getting some people typing questions in, and we will try and answer as many as possible. But if you have a question, just type it in the question box. So thanks, Mike, and I hope you'll hang around for a little bit because we have a number of questions for you.
That's fine. Yep. And actually, as luck would have it, my screen's back up.
Timing is everything. So with that, I would like to now introduce Vanessa Williams. She's a program manager at the Federal Transit Administration, another important partner for those of us in the clean transportation industry. And Vanessa, as I understand it, has a whole team of folks from FTA with her who are going to talk about various aspects of the FTA program. Thanks, Vanessa.
You're welcome. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Vanessa Williams, and my colleagues and I would like to thank everyone for the opportunity to participate in this webinar. As a result of MAP-21, FTA experienced some program changes. There were new programs created. Some programs were repealed, and others was either consolidated or modified. The Clean Fields Grant Program, Section 5308, was one of the programs repealed under MAP-21. So I get a lot of questions wondering what other funding opportunities is out there for alternate fuel vehicles. Hold on, my screen just went blank. Okay, I'm back on. So compressed natural gas and other alternative fuel-related facilities and vehicles are funded under MAP-21 under the following programs. We have Bus and Bus Facility Formula Program, Section 5339, State of Good Repair Formula Grant, Section 5337, Urbanized Areas Formula, Section 5307, Formula Grant for Rural Areas, Section 5311, and Research and Demonstration Programs. So right now I have in the room, I have the program managers are here in the room, and each program manager will give a brief overview of their program, what's eligible, the match requirement, period of availability, and funds allocation. So we're going to start with the first program manager. We're going to start with the Bus and Bus Facility Formula Program, Section 5339.
Hi, my name is Sam Sneed. I manage the Section 5339 Bus and Bus Facilities Program. The biggest change to the Bus and Bus Facilities Program this year is that it's now a formula program, as before it was a discretionary program where there was a competition held. In terms of eligibility, capital projects include projects to replace, rehabilitate, and purchase buses and related equipment, and projects to construct bus-related facilities. For the match requirement, assistance in American Disabilities Act or Clean Air Act project. In that case, for vehicles, it shall not exceed 85%, and for equipment and facilities, it shall not exceed 90% of the project cost. For the period of availability, it is 4 years. That includes the fiscal year plus the 3 additional years. And for fund allocations, funds are allocated to states based on population, vehicle revenue miles, and passenger miles. Another note for this program is there is a transferability to 5307 and 5311.
Okay, now the State of Good Repair Formula Grant, Section 5337.
Hi, my name is Eric Hu. I'm the project manager for State of Good Repair Program. State Good Repair Program, it's a new program established under the new law, MAP-21. The purpose of this program is to maintain trust properties in state good repair. So the eligible activities, they are limited to replacements and rehab activities. Also, the system must be at least 7 years old for projects that's for high-intensity guideway and high-intensity autobus systems. High-intensity guideway system, they are heavy rail, light rail, commuter rail, or ferry boats. Passenger ferry boats, and also BRT system, bus rapid systems. Motor bus system, that means bus running on HOV lanes. Also, the funds can be used for replace, rehab, rolling stock, vehicles, track, line equipment, and structures, signal and communication systems. Also, this fund can be used to implement transit asset management plan. This is necessary. This is must. This plan is must under the new law, MAP-21, in order to apply for the funds. For federal funds matching requirements, the maximum is normally federal shares maximum is 80%. Local required 20% share. But if it's required to project are required to comply Clean Air Act or ADA requirements for vehicles, the federal share can be as much as 85%. For equipment and facilities, can be as much as 90%. The funds can be available for about 4 years, including fiscal year, plus additional 3 years. Fund allocations, they can allocate, FTA allocate funds to UZAs, urbanized areas that with a population over 200,000 people. And apportionment are based on vehicle revenue miles, directional route miles, and FY 2011 allocations. This program disregards vehicles propulsion systems and fuel types that doesn't give any special treatment. That's for SGR program. I'll turn over to Adam.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Adam Schulze, Program Manager for the 5307 program. Before I start with 5307, I was asked to say a quick word about FTA's Section 5320, Paul Sarbanes Transit and Park Program, Transit and Parks, which was repealed under MAP-21. This was a safety loop program to provide funding for alternative transportation options, vehicles and facilities, as well as non-motorized facilities for visitors to federally owned lands such as national parks, forests, and refuges. The projects under this program have included clean fuels and new technology projects, but the last call for projects closed last month for this program, and we expect to announce projects by the end of the year. Again, the program was repealed, but these projects continue to be eligible, and funds are available from the Federal Highway Administration under the Federal Lands Access Program. Now for 5307, this program is broadly similar to how it was under Safety Loop. Provides approximately $4.6 billion a year nationally for a broad range of public transportation projects, including capital expenses, which include clean fuels vehicles and facilities, as well as planning and operating expenses for public transportation under some circumstances. Like the other FTA programs, capital projects have an 80% federal share, except that we're permitted to award up to a 90% federal share for clean fuels, facilities, and equipment, and 85% federal for clean fuel vehicles. Now, funds for this program are also apportioned by formula. The formula is listed there. It takes into account a variety of population and service-based demographics and metrics. And the funds are allocated to individual urbanized areas for projects that are identified at the state and local level. Like all federally funded projects, the projects need to be programmed in coordination with the Metropolitan Planning Agency for a given urbanized area. So I guess just quickly, that was the 5307 program, and I'll pass it on to Lorna Wilson for the 5311 program.
Good afternoon. The formula grants for rural areas. This program provides funding for public transportation in rural areas, which are populations under 50,000. With MAP-21, the Job Access and Reverse Commute project was repealed. But the Job Access and Reverse Commute projects are eligible types of projects are now eligible under the rural program. The eligibility also includes capital, operating, and also needs for program planning. There is a match requirement. For capital assistance, it's 80%, the maximum federal share, and for operating assistance, 50%. With the exception of vehicles from the ADA Clean Air Act, that match cannot exceed 85% of the net project cost, and also for equipment and facilities under the ADA and Clean Air Act, facilities should not exceed, equipment and facilities should not exceed 90% of the net project cost. The period of availability of those funds are a total of 3 years. The year of apportionment was 2 years. And the funds are allocated based on land area and population in rural areas. There's also a revenue vehicle mile component to the allocation and a low-income individuals in rural areas. And there's also a set-aside for the program. There's actually a couple. One is for public transportation in Appalachian regions, and there are about 16 states that are eligible for that apportionment under allocation under the program. And also there's a set-aside for a discretionary tribal transit program, or discretionary and formula components of the tribal transit program. That's just about it.
Okay, the next slide.
My name's Christina Gikakis, and I'm with the research office here at FTA. The new MAP-21 research piece gives us authority to conduct activities in 3 areas. It's research, innovation, and development, and demonstration, deployment, and evaluation. There are many activities eligible under this research authority, and if you want details, I suggest you go to section 5312, where it provides the detailed authority and eligible activities. One program under the deployment piece is the Low or No Emission Vehicle Deployment Program. To provide some context, I just want to mention FTA's previous authority and previous program, the National Fuel Cell Bus Program. This program specifically focused on fuel cell bus commercialization and provided funds for development and deployment of only fuel cell bus activities. This section was repealed in MAP-21. The new Low or No Vehicle Deployment Program expands the technologies effectively for deployment activities beyond just fuel cells. It incorporates other zero-emission technologies such as battery electric buses. The program provides funding for acquiring or leasing low or no emission vehicles and for constructing or leasing facilities and equipment to support these vehicles. We are working on the details of how this program will be implemented, and I should mention, of course, the funding levels will be determined through the appropriations process, but this program does present an opportunity to bring low and no emissions transit vehicles into the mainstream beyond the authority we've had in the past. And I think that's it. That's it. Let's say about that.
Next slide. Okay, that concludes FTA presentation on alternative fuel vehicles opportunities in MAP-21. I also provided a link to our public website, and from there you can, there's fact sheets for many of the programs for more details. Okay, any questions? Andrew, you still there?
Whoops, sorry about that. I was on mute. Thank you, Vanessa, and the team of folks from FTA. Great presentation. Obviously, there's a lot of information, and I'm sure you can imagine, we have dozens of questions. So first thing I want to mention before we get into some of the questions is that the webinar, both the slides and the recording, will be put up on the Transportation Energy Partners website within the next couple of days, so you'll be able to have that as a resource, and that's www.transportationenergypartners.org. So just wanted to make that clear. You can feel free to keep the questions coming. I have a couple of quick basic questions. One, I wanted to confirm for the FTA folks, when you say Clean Air Act projects, does that include alternative fuel vehicle and infrastructure projects?
Generally, yes. Yeah, that's for clean fuels vehicles and facilities that, that comply with the Clean Air Act. So anything that's low emissions, basically.
Okay, so something that contributes to improved air quality.
Correct.
Great. And then I have a question, just so I understand. This is for Christina on the FTA Research and Development program. The first question is on the funding level. I understand it's determined by the appropriations process. Right now we're under a 6-month continuing resolution. Are you going to start the program during the next 6 months? And what level of funding do you anticipate having, or how do you intend on dealing with the current financial situation we're in, the federal government's in?
This is Jamie Pfister with the Office of Transit Programs. We recently issued our FY13 Continuing Resolution Apportionment Notice, where we had some interim guidance on MAP-21, and we indicated for pretty much all of the discretionary programs, and particularly this one that you've asked about, until future funding becomes available, we would not initiate a notice of funding availability.
Okay, so you're going to wait until everything
right.
gets a little more clearer.
Yes.
Okay, that's good to know. Then my next question is, it relates to that, and it has to do with both for Mike at the FHWA and also for all the FTA folks. Can you say a little bit about your guidance on the formula programs and how that's working, and do the states or the other formula recipients, do they have their funding, or when will they have it, and when will that funding be available? Mike, do you want to go first from FHWA's
As far as
standpoint?
the guidance is concerned, we have supplemental interim guidance out on the agency's website. That's been out for, I guess, about a month now. Q's and A's along those lines too have been out for a little bit longer than that, and a couple of other things. As far as the funds for FY13 are out there, apportioned in line with the continuing resolution. There are still some things that not so much unresolved, but things that normally would take a little bit longer anyway, that come out in what our finance folks call these supplemental budget supposition, these supplementary tables. These would be items like the mandatory and flexible spending breakdown for minimum apportionment states. That's not available just yet, and I don't think they expect those types of tables to be out until somewhere toward the end of the calendar year. I believe the PM 2.5 set-aside, the priority set-aside amounts are in the fiscal management information system, so at least the knowledge is out there of what that PM 2.5 set-aside actually is. I don't think that's, well, I know that supplemental table has not been published just yet either, but it is uploaded in the agency's management system, the fiscal system.
And how about the FTA folks? Can you say a little bit about the funding that's out there for your formula programs?
Sure. So this is Jamie Pfister again with the Office of Transit Programs. As you mentioned, we are under a continuing resolution through March 27th, 2013. So last week in the Federal Register, FTA published its apportionments under the continuing resolution for the formula programs that are authorized by our CR. And that was posted, I believe, in the Federal Register on the 16th. And in that document with the apportionments, with information is interim guidance on how we're implementing these programs, at least for the interim in 2013. A lot of the stuff that comes, there's a lot of regulatory requirements and rulemakings that will have to be underway, at FTA, and then a lot of guidance documents have to be revised as a result of MAP-21, and the agency is looking at all of those dates. There's not kind of an overarching calendar, but over the next year there will be several notice and comment opportunities for stakeholders as we continue to implement the changes of MAP-21, whether it's a circular revision or a rulemaking. Definitely keep an eye on our website and sign up for alerts. But if you haven't seen the last week's Federal Register, that's certainly the starting point. Accompanying the notice are 17 tables that have the apportionments in them by program, and those tables, depending on the program, will list the apportionment that's available either at the state level or at the urbanized area level.
Great. So the bottom line is some portion of the funding has been distributed and available to the formula recipients.
Yes.
Okay. I have a question. This is again for the FTA folks. In the past, when federal, and these are coming in from folks in our audience out there, in the past when FTA funding was used to build CNG fueling stations for metro buses, transit buses, the station could not be shared with other public or private fleets in the area. Will there be more flexibility under MAP-21 to allow the sharing of these fueling stations?
I don't know that we've considered that at this time. I mean, I think there's different arrangements at the local level that we consider. Usually any sort of joint development projects are proposed through a regional office, and it sounds like that might be the type of project you're referring to. There are some provisions that the agency are still reviewing with regards to private participation that are in MAP-21, so we don't know at this time if there'll be any changes.
Okay. And what, can you say anything about the process for determining that, or if we have, or who would be a good point person for us to talk to about those issues?
I think actually our joint development circular just went out for notice and comment, and I'll have to check who the point person is if that's the type of projects you're referring to. If it's a local agency, a grantee who wants to share stations and do some sort of incidental use with a federally funded station, the best point of contact is to start with the regional office, particularly the regional council, on those discussions. And again, it's best if the transit agency in that area initiates the discussion with their regional office. So if there's a particular area and you need an actual name from one of our lawyers in the region, in the field, let us know. You can get in touch with us through Vanessa.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. There are a number of questions, Mike, related to cost effectiveness and performance. And I guess a couple of questions. One is, do you know if there have been any assessments to date or an analysis on the cost effectiveness and performance of either projects that purchase alternative fuel vehicles or that develop alternative fuels infrastructure, and how those projects compare to other projects eligible for CMAQ funding? And secondly, and just any advice on, if on a going forward basis, how, for example, somebody who's building an infrastructure project, how could they effectively demonstrate the emission benefits and the cost effectiveness?
Yeah, we have a group here, part of our team in environment and planning, that's looking into some of these graphics and tables and studies that support the graphics and tables that have already been done, looking to update those, and then also go out and either through in-house efforts or contract new studies based on some of these typical questions, cost per ton of emissions reduced, things of that nature. All fuel vehicles and all fuel infrastructure were parts of some of those tables that we developed or used last time with the safety lube guidance, but most of the returns, most of the statistics seem to be pretty divergent. So I think there's probably going to be an attempt right now to at least get a little bit more of a handle on something that's either consistent or to let folks know right off the bat that they indeed are still pretty divergent. We're just starting to look into that this time around. I know a few of the tables that we used last time around were either from EPA or Department of Energy. They're getting some age to them now, so they're probably going to require more than just a dust-off and an update. That's something that's still very much in development. We'll probably be doing that research concurrently with the writing and coordination of the guidance, the larger guidance document.
And Mike, in the meantime, can states, before this stuff has all been figured out and the tables have been developed and vetted and all the guidance is out, in the meantime, can states fund projects?
Sure. I mean, these projects haven't become newly eligible with MAP-21. I mean, Safety Lou and certainly T-21 had a pretty strong emphasis on alternative fuels, and we've been doing these all along. They can certainly propose these projects, and if the state and the local government chooses them, then they're just as eligible now as they ever were.
Okay, and they're not going to, the states aren't going to feel, since they're supposed to evaluate them based on the performance, that they're not going to feel frozen and want to shift their funds to other programs or those kinds of things.
Well, I guess it depends on the types of data, the type of data that the state or the other local government sponsor has in terms of cost effectiveness and whatever is developed between now and the life of this bill. I mean, there's clearly going to be more emphasis placed on cost effectiveness. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a choice with what's been written into the legislation. But as far as the basic eligibility, though, that hasn't changed. The project selection has always been up to the state as far as what they want to put. So we will over that.
Right. Got it. There have been a number of questions also for you, Mike. Do LNG vehicles and infrastructure also qualify under alternative fuels?
If the state or the sponsor, the local government, can point to the appropriate emissions reduction based on what the areas of non-attainment or maintenance for, then they sure do.
Okay. Great.
That again, that hasn't changed. Very little change as far as eligibility. Very little, if anything, in MAP-21.
Great. Let's see, what else do we have here? We have a lot of questions coming in. Vanessa, question for you. This is just an administrative question. Can we get the names of your team there, and so that we can get folks' names and contact information out to the participants after the webinar?
Yes, I can provide the names of the program managers.
That would be great.
And those names are also located in our apportionment notice that was just published by the program.
Great. Okay, and we can provide a link to that. So question, are there any specific carbon-based, carbon reduction programs or incentives under MAP-21? Either Mike, I don't know if you want to take that first, if you're aware of anything.
I'm not aware of any, and for us in CMAQ, that can be an ancillary benefit, an extra benefit, and we certainly welcome that type of a reduction and emissions reduction. But carbon is not seen the criteria pollutants. But we sure welcome projects that kill two birds with one stone.
And how about the FTA folks?
No, we're not aware of any.
Okay, same answer. Ancillary benefit. Also, Mike, I understand that there's some new language in the surface transportation program that gives some added emphasis to electric vehicle and natural gas infrastructure funding. Can you say anything about that briefly?
The only thing I can do is confirm that it is there. We did kind of a quick sweep on eligible CMAQ program types, project types, I should say, that had some type of a dual presence in other programs around the Federal Aid Highway Program, and that was indeed there. Again, though, it's up to the state and how they want to allocate that money. If they want to spend it for that type of alt fuel infrastructure, then that's all fine and good. But it's certainly still eligible under our program.
Great. And my understanding for folks out there is that there is a new provision in the surface transportation program, and those dollars go, a portion of them go to the states, and then a portion go directly to the local metropolitan planning organizations, and there is new language in there for electric vehicle and natural gas infrastructure, and so that's another place for folks to look for funding. There's a question, you may not have the answer about this, but can you give any advice or talk at all about the process for people approaching the states for CMAQ funding? Any recommendations on how best to do that? And also, do you have a list of CMAQ coordinators for all the different states that we could just get out there to folks?
Yeah, I would. Your best bet, actually, your best bet on both of those questions is to contact the Federal Highway Division office, or if you want to go region, you contact the FTA region office. I'll steal a little bit from my FTA colleagues there. Those folks in the divisions and the regions have a lot more local contact, and they can give you names, whereas the list that we keep up to date here are just plain and simple not that up to date. Folks change jobs, they change responsibilities, and it just doesn't always provide a real service to give somebody a name of somebody that's not really working in the organization anymore. On the first question, my advice has always been to start with the lowest local common denominator. Go to the MPO's local air quality subcommittee, the transportation planning subcommittee, something along those lines that gets you into the county or the city and the MPO's office, as opposed to going straight to the state DOT, where you might get lost pretty quickly, especially in a big state. But if you can touch base with the organization that's actually out there putting projects in the TIP, in the Transportation Improvement Program, I think that's probably going to serve you better than going to the larger organization. But again, I think the FHWA division or the FTA region can probably be a little bit more help there.
Okay. Any advice on from the FTA folks on how best, if you have a good project, to access funds?
Again, we just suggest that the transit agency contact the regional office and work with the MPO and the state.
Okay, that's great. And let me just look at my list here. Mike, I had a question about PM 2.5 areas. Is there a list of those that exists?
Yeah, I would go to, I don't have the website here, but if you Google EPA's Green Book, and you'll see a list of every one of the criteria pollutants, and they will be broken down by either non-attainment area across the board, non-attainment maintenance area, or broken down state by state.
Great.
Or the folks can email me too if they prefer.
Great. I think we will stop there. We've gone over an hour. I want to thank our guest presenters, Vanessa Williams and team from the Federal Transit Administration, and Mike Kuntz from the Federal Highway Administration. This is a lot of great information. Obviously, we're entering into somewhat of a new era here. With these programs, a lot of things are staying the same, but a lot of things are changing. I think the important thing to recognize is that there still will be significant funding within the Department of Transportation for alternative fuel vehicles and infrastructure. My recommendation following Mike's and FTA's is to, if you have a project, contact folks both within your metropolitan planning organization at the local level and talk to your transit agencies, and you want to talk to your state agencies, and then if necessary talk to the regional FTA and highway agencies. They can all be helpful to you. But there will be significant funding, and some of it will start to be available very quickly. And I want to remind folks about the Transportation Energy Partners Energy Independence Summit next April 8th through 10th, and encourage you all to come to that. And we will have both the recording and the PowerPoint slides up on the Transportation Energy Partners website within the next couple of days, so you can go back there to get additional information. So with that, I want to thank everybody for participating in today's webinar, and we will be having another webinar in mid-November to talk about what the elections will mean for the future of alternative fuels and vehicles in both the next Congress and with the next administration after we see the results of the election. So with that, thanks everybody, and we will be in touch soon. Take care.
Thank you.